Hello, my name is Matthew Thomas, and I'm a journalist with Fansite, and I'm here with the Survivor winner, Adam Klein. How's it going, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm very excited to talk to you about like current Survivor and your Survivor experience, and I think you're like a fascinating player, so I'm really excited for this conversation.
I appreciate the invitation. So yeah, excited to chat with you.
So right off the hop, I want to ask you about Survivor 49. Like, what is your take on this season so far?
So I think obviously a lot of the discourse is that maybe it's a little bit of a boring season. There haven't been a whole lot of like big moves. The alliances have stuck together. In some ways I agree, but I think that this is how it should be some of the time, right? Like
Okay.
the goal for a player out there is to play the best game possible to get themselves to the end of the game and win $1 million, right? And sometimes the right move is to stick with your alliance. Not
Sure.
always, right? But sometimes the situation lends itself to this is the right thing to do. And so I don't think that these players are playing badly.
Hmm.
I think they're playing well. And it just happens to be that their best move is to stick together. And to me, this shows that the show is real. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
like, because I don't think this is what producers would want. They would want them to be doing some, more mischievous moves and blindsiding people and that sort of thing. But, it's not always in the player's best interest. And ultimately, I see it as the game that it is, and I can respect it when people are playing a good game. I actually think in this last episode that there was maybe a missed opportunity. Everybody says never throw a challenge,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but the way that this is, it seems pretty clear that it's old Uli versus old Hina,
Yeah.
and if you've got two old Ulis hostage and you've got one of your guys on the other side who seems like he's next on the chopping block, this is the chance to even things up going into a merge. So I don't know. I was trying to think. I was like, could I ever throw a challenge here? Would that ever be the right move? And it might have been. I don't know. I think they may come to regret. They're down in numbers by
Yep.
two now.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think that's going to be tough for old Hina to recover from that. And this may be one of the few instances in Survivor history where throwing a challenge may have actually been the right thing to do.
As
But
somebody who's
overall, I think, yeah.
As somebody who's
Sorry.
strictly a fan who's never played it, that's 100% what I was thinking should have been happening in that episode. Like, I completely understand, obviously, when you're out there, like taking that risk would be like feel monumental, but I just didn't understand the logic of, at the very least, there not being like lengthy conversations. I mean, they could have happened and they didn't show them, but I was baffled why they wouldn't have made that move because to me it seemed so obvious.
Yeah, I feel like if those conversations did happen, they probably would have aired them. You would think, but you never know.
Yeah.
But you'd have to imagine that they considered it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Maybe it's not as cut and dry as it appears to us that it's so clearly divided, like Hina and Uli, but really seems to be that way. And I'd be nervous that Jason would go and that there'd only be four of us left.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing I was thinking when I realized that they weren't like seemingly even considering that was that maybe they don't want to lose the challenge and like have their flint taken away and all that rigmarole. But even that, I don't see why that would be like a hindrance in that situation.
The flint being taken away, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because the number of times we had to relight the fire after we got it going, one, two in 39 days, I don't know. It doesn't need that much as long as there's still embers,
Yeah,
and there will be embers by the time you come back from a challenge, unless it's like absolutely pouring rain. Even if there's a little bit of drizzle, there's still a layer underneath that's really hot embers, right? And so
yeah.
you should be able to get a fire going again without flint, so long as you have had one already.
So
So the Flint didn't
what is
mean
your
much.
take on like the fact that they are not giving people that their flint like right off the bat? Because I like it seemed like based on the last several seasons, it seems like the one tribe not having their flint right off the start is a major domino in potentially having a disaster tribe. Like how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the Flint is less important in New Era Survivor because, I mean, people like at the beginning of Millennials Gen X, uh, we were boiling the water, right, to
Yeah,
drink it, or at least the rest of the tribe was
yeah,
like I knew that the water could be was able to be drank, but didn't want anybody to know that I was a big fan, and so I was just like, well, what's the worst that can happen? And
yeah.
so I was just like, "Eh." And they're like, you could get parasites and have to. I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna risk it for the biscuit. And they're like, you're an idiot. But everyone else was boiling the water. So you used to think that you needed to boil the water, and then also obviously you needed to cook rice in order to be able to eat the rice that was provided.
Yep.
It's nice at night to have the warmth, right, from a
Yep.
fire. But they're not boiling the water. They're drinking it straight out of the well now.
Yep.
And they are not cooking rice. So, what's really the need for fire besides comfort? Yeah, maybe you can cook the coconut and make it taste a little better or whatever, but like it's not really a requirement for living like it was when there was rice provided, I think.
Yep.
So I don't think it's like, I mean, obviously it matters, but I used to say when they did the sweat and savvy stuff
Yep.
that it wasn't worth doing sweat. Like it was the right decision for Jelinski and Q to they should have just never even done it. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yep.
it's just like not worth the energy expended to be able to have a Flint 2 days earlier or even the like it's just I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but with that specific instance though, like I could see the value of doing it if for no even like just taking away the practical effect of not having the flint, just the fact of like being able to go back to the tribe as like the victor could have had like there's some social capital there, right?
For sure. But if everyone were, you know, playing logically,
Yes.
everyone would agree. Don't tire our strongest people out on this when we have to go into an immunity challenge.
Yep.
Like the immunity challenges are far more important, and those sweat tasks were incredibly exhausting. Is it worth it? I mean, the logical side of me says no, but yeah, I mean, if other people aren't thinking that way, then yeah, of course you need to adjust to who you have on your tribe, and you want to try to be in their good graces and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the losing the Flint is a great punishment. I think the reason why the Kelly tribe kept losing is not because they lost their Flint, but it's because they didn't have a puzzler, or maybe they voted their
Yeah.
puzzler out first. I don't know. But
Yeah.
like all of those challenges came down to a puzzle at the end, every single one. And they didn't have a good puzzler. And Jason, meanwhile, was like crushing it, right?
Yep.
Like he could do any puzzle in 2 seconds. So that's really what it came down to, I think.
That's the main reason why, like, I that and like just from a television perspective, I hate the fact that like current Survivor is so over reliant on finishing challenges with puzzles. Because one, like, I personally, when I'm watching it, when like the challenge starts, other than like again, like the potential social impacts of like if a specific player is really falling behind in a challenge or whatever, like when I'm watching it, I feel like completely disengaged throughout the vast majority of the stuff that happens before the puzzle. Because yeah, there have been a few instances where the stuff that happened before the puzzle, where the puzzle was so close that that actually mattered. But in the vast majority,
It
there's a tribe
always
at the
comes
end that
down.
is so far behind that none of that stuff matters whatsoever.
Yeah, it always comes down to the puzzle. Always. Everything else is window dressing. But I mean, in this last episode, there wasn't a puzzle, right? And I think maybe even the episode before. So, like, since they've swapped, have they ended with a puzzle? I don't think so. But
I don't think so
interestingly,
either, but I'm
before
not.
the swap, they were all puzzles.
Yeah,
So I think if even like throw it into the thing had been one of the immunity challenges earlier, maybe,
Yeah.
they would have had a shot.
What do you think of like the Survivor 49 cast so far?
I think the cast is great. I think that people are going to say, "Oh, well, the season's not that interesting, and so the cast isn't that interesting." And look, again, like I said, they're playing to win. These
Yeah.
players want to win the game, and that should be their number one priority out there. Casting and the producers, they want people who are going to come out and make big moves and blow up their game to make it more interesting. But once you get out there, the job is go win the game. Well, look, the job is whatever you want the job to be,
Sure.
right? When I work with people that are going on the show, I always ask them before they go out, what is your priority? Because not everything always will accomplish, you can't accomplish it all always.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will have to choose between making good television and doing something that is better for your game and making a flashy move versus making a safer move that if it doesn't work out you won't be on the show at all, and but if it does work out you could win the game. But then sometimes like there's so many different things to value. Do you want the full experience? Do you want to be there the whole time? Do you want to win the game? Is that priority number one? Do you want to be invited back? Is
Yeah.
that priority number one? Do you know what I mean? And so
Yep.
I asked them to just not to tell me because it's not for me, but just to have thought about very deeply before they go out there. What are your, what is your top priority? And
Yep.
then I say, focus on that priority, right? Like, and when there's a choice, remember why you're out there, right?
So,
Remember
so
what the goal is.
So like that's fascinating to me because like I can completely understand like the point you're making and I think it's like incredibly valid. But like it also makes me like curious as somebody who's won the game and then came back and you have absolutely created a lot of great TV moments. What do you want to see when you're watching the show? Like, do you want to see what we're seeing now, where the people are playing safe, or are you more interested when they're people making big moves, and sometimes even for the sake of making big moves? Like, what do you want out of the
As a
show as somebody?
fan,
Yeah,
I like it when people are playing to win.
yeah,
Now, what we're seeing on the current season, I do believe, is people playing to win. It just happens to, in this case, not be that dynamic,
sure,
right? But a lot of the times, playing to win is very dynamic, right? Like I would say, both times I went out, my goal was to win the game,
yep,
right? That was my sole priority and focus. And in the first time, I would say going along with that was like being in as many episodes as possible to give my mom as much to look forward to as possible. But that sort of correlated with playing to win. And although it doesn't always, right? Like
sure,
sometimes you can make it far. Like I could have, I think, made it farther on Winners at War to be in more episodes if I'd kept my mouth shut.
mm,
But I took a riskier approach to go after Sarah, let's say, when, I had previously been on her tribe and we had voted together in the first vote of the merge and to vote out Rob or whatever, but I never really trusted her.
yeah,
And I knew that ultimately she needed to be voted out and breaking up from Tony and Ben and
yeah,
Kim and all these people in order to have a shot to win the game.
yeah,
And so it was a high risk, high reward move
yeah,
that didn't work out, that got
yeah,
me voted out, right? And so if the goal is to win, sometimes it means taking big swings, and sometimes it means playing it safe, and it's just dependent on the situation. I don't love it when people go out there where it's just big move, big move, big move,
yeah,
because it's like if there's no rationality to it, like a lot of the things where people are like, I need to vote out my number one to prove that I'm playing,
yeah,
makes no sense to me. No sense to me. It's like, why?
Yeah,
I just don't get that because just so you've made a big move, like, and I'm not going to be
resume.
impressed by that as a jury member, not at all.
Yeah.
Unless there was strategic reason for, like, if you thought they were going to come after you, or if you thought they were going to beat you at the end. But even still, I'm not doing it when there's 10 people left. What
Yeah.
do you, like, you wait until you're closer to the end and then you vote them out after they've helped you get further in the game. Anyway, so there's things like that, I don't like. Just because it's a big move doesn't mean it's a good move.
Yeah, and like for me personally, like in the new era, stuff like that feels even more strange to me because like there was a time where it really felt like winning the game kind of felt like you needed to have that resume to point to, like people were looking for that in the final tribal council, whereas now it seems to be much more about like the people who made those connections. And so to me, like going out there wanting to build a resume for no apparent reason makes even less sense than it ever did.
When are you saying you think the resume was important? At what
Like
stage?
it maybe in like the 20s and the 30s where like people wanted like when like obviously there was some exceptions with like people were pissed off at Russell Hantz or whatever, but there was definitely a time where to me it felt like people were in the final tribal council, like all their questions were a lot more about like what you did here, what you did there, like your accomplishments, more as now that's a lot of the questions seem to be a lot more about like how, what are you going to do with the money? What do you know about me? Like all those connections seem to be much more in the foreground than they used to be, in my opinion, as a
I
watcher,
don't know that
anyways.
yeah, I don't know that I agree with you on that. I think that I don't think that there's been a big shift in the way that juries vote. I think ultimately what it comes down to is nobody has ever won the game without making friends along the way.
Yeah,
I said this is my strategy going into Millennials Gen X, and I think it still holds true today. You have to get people to like and respect you, right? And I think that playing a strong game is part of the way that you can earn some respect. But ultimately, I think juries have always voted for whoever makes them feel good about their season, right?
okay,
Um,
yeah.
and so I think that yeah, I guess I don't agree that there's been a big shift in how juries vote.
See,
Um,
what I mean by that though is I feel like in certain like especially like in like the older situations, I feel like because I think what you said there was very apropos, where you said what makes them feel good about their season. Like now it seems to for me like, and again, I've never played the show, so I'm just judging based on somebody who watches the TV show. It seems like there was a long time where what made people feel good about their season was who out there was making the big moves, like who was out there would represent their season as like somebody who did like a big was like a big player who accomplished big things. Whereas now, to me as a watcher, like it seems like with like people like Erica winning and people like that, like it seems to be much more about like the people who they liked as people as much as what moves that they made.
but there's a difference between a big move and a smart move. And
Sure.
I think juries have never looked for big moves. I think they
Okay.
look for smart moves. And sometimes some of the players who have really big moves at the end of the season, it's like, did those moves serve you? Right?
Yeah.
Like, were they like I would say that, in Millennials Gen X, Hannah probably made bigger moves than I did. But my argument at the end was like, were they the right moves? Did they
Yeah.
set you up for success?
Yeah.
And I think that argument holds water with pretty much every jury. It's like, explain to me why that move was good for you. Why did it help you get to the end with people that you could beat at the end?
Yeah.
Right. And if you're not able to articulate that, if you're like, well, I wanted to vote out my closest ally because I wanted to show everybody that I was playing, yeah, that's not gonna, that if I'm a jury member,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, so you made it harder on yourself
Yeah.
to prove a point?
Yeah.
Like, I don't respect that.
So I completely understand where you're saying there, but like so. one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about too was Survivor 50 coming up. Because as somebody
Mhm.
who played during Winners at War, which to me, like, other than like All Stars and Heroes versus Villains, and now and Winners at War, those three are like the three previous like landmark seasons in my view. And then Survivor 50 hopefully will join that club. When you were going into Winners at War, like, did you have a different perspective on like how you need to play? Because like for instance, and like Second Chances is another example where like when I was watching Second Chances, a lot of the players were talking a lot about how they wanted to prove that they were worthy of having been voted back in. So it feels to me like when you're watching like the All Stars, Heroes versus Villains, Winners of War, Second Chances, and most likely 50, it feels like there's a different mentality that players go into. So for somebody who played during 40, did you feel that? Like, do you think that changed the game?
So I think a lot of people uh, have some connection to their legacy,
Yeah.
right? They feel strongly that they don't want to embarrass themselves and that they want to, yeah, prove why they were invited back or that they're worthy of the shot or whatever. These things never factored for me. I wanted to win. I
Yeah.
wanted to win the game. And I actually, I think that that gave me a little bit of an edge going into Winners at War because I was like, look, people already think I didn't deserve to win, that I won because of a sob story or whatever. And did that bother me after Millennials Gen X? Of course it did. I
Yeah.
wanted everybody to understand that I won because of the game that I played, not because of anything that was going on at home. And yeah, that's why I told producers the morning of Final Tribal Councils, like, I'm not going to be talking about my mom tonight,
Yeah.
because I don't need to do that to win the game. It's not going to help me win the game, and I don't want people at home to think that that's why I won the game because I was pretty confident that I was going to win the game. And it ended up being the only answer to the questions that came at the end, which I think
Sure.
they sort of knew. But so I ended up talking about it, and of course I was right, and people talked about that and said, but so look, I had been used to like people misunderstanding my game, but when I came back for 40
Yep.
it became an advantage because it was like, okay, now people here that I'm going to be playing with may not fully understand why I won the game. And so they may just think of me as this sweet kid. I was the youngest person on that season,
Yep.
who, uh, didn't play much of a strategic game and wasn't or even social game, whatever, right? And so I'm not somebody to be worried about. But going in like and being focused on the win when other people are concerned about their legacy, I do think it gives you a little bit of an edge. And this is why I say I talk to my clients about like what are your priorities? Like what do you want to have happen here,
Yeah.
more than anything? And if you can remain focused on like the win, then you may end up doing things that might look stupid. Like I think JT is a great example of a player who. Yeah, now people are like, oh, he tarnished his legacy or whatever. I mean, I don't think that mattered to JT. I think what
Yeah.
mattered to him was I'm going to do whatever I can to try to win the game. And the idea of getting somebody from the other tribe on your side when you're 5-5 or whatever they were in Heroes versus Villains and doing
Yep.
whatever it takes to make that happen, that is potentially very embarrassing if it doesn't work out. But if it does work out, puts you in a great position to win the game.
Yeah, I've never
And
felt
so
like that. I've never felt like that move from him was like properly gauged by fans. When like people talked about it as being like one of the stupidest moves in the show's history. I've never understood that. Yes, it was
because
like you
it
said
didn't work
earlier,
out.
like high risk, high reward. But it could have been like if it had worked out, it would have been like the most genius move in Survivor history.
Yeah, yeah, because it didn't work out. But if it worked out, right. And so I think there were a lot of people on Winners at War that played a little tight potentially because they didn't want to look stupid.
Yeah. Do you think that you had like a big advantage in that season because of the fact that you were underestimated going into it then?
For sure, I think I squandered that advantage. Uh, but I still believe that that was a season I could have won.
Yeah.
It was going to be a tough road, and I knew it would take a lot because the caliber of players there was truly remarkable. But I had good relationships coming in. I had a good low threat level,
Yep.
right? And I think I was underestimated. I think I wasn't really seen as that big of a threat coming in. And for a little bit there, I was able to sort of really make things happen and gain control of my tribe. And
Yep.
the problem was I did it a little bit too well, and I was aligned with every single person on my tribe
Yeah.
because I worked so hard to try to not be the first one voted out that I ended up having everybody think that they were the ones that saved me. And so I owed all of them from their point of view. Uh, and that made it tough to navigate when we had to continue to vote people out. And then, I sort of burned myself trying to keep all the balls in the air.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, maybe if we win one more immunity challenge pre-swap, I think things could have been very different for me because I would have gone into a swap with, instead of having lost trust with everybody,
Yeah.
I had really good trust with everybody and had a lot of options moving forward.
So, like, applying that experience that you had versus Winners versus War to Survivor 50, like knowing what it's like to go into a landmark season like that, and especially as like an underestimated player, are there like players that you're really like looking at to be a huge deal during 50? Like for me, Jenna Lewis, I have very high hopes for her going in because I think she's wildly underestimated because what she pulled off during All Stars was like super impressive, but most people seem to have completely forgotten what she was like during that season. So to me, like
Mhm.
I have her as like an early winner threat for that season. Is there anybody jumping out at you like that?
Yeah, for me, probably Angelina,
Okay.
because I think that people, when they think of Angelina, just like people would think of me and my mom, and maybe that being why I won and whatever, they think of the jacket, they think of
Yeah.
the rice
Yeah.
negotiation, they think of some of, the hijinks
Yeah.
from David versus Goliath.
The drunken
But
ladder.
yeah, the latter, right? But what I think about when I think of Angelina is I think of somebody who was student body president at Stanford University, who has served on boards and started her own business and is extremely smart and
Yeah.
ambitious and super social. And I think that there's so much to her that most people haven't seen, that I think it could give her an advantage. If they're focused on the jackets and that
Yeah.
sort of thing, then they may be surprised uh, with how strategic and social she is.
Yeah. Is there anybody else who like that who's jumping out at you?
Let's see.
Or even beyond that, like, is there anybody who you like are really interested to see how they're going to do on the season?
Um, I'm trying to go back through the cast again in my mind.
The catalog?
Um, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see Colby again after so many years. I think the last time we saw him was 15 years ago,
Yeah, that
right?
sounds
Is
right.
that right for
Yeah,
season
that
20?
sounds right.
No,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's been 30 seasons and there's two a year, so 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And at that point, he was called Superman in a fat suit.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, and that was 15 years ago. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, he's not the young buck anymore,
Yeah.
right? Can he play a different game? I would have loved to see Jerry out there.
Yeah.
I just and like not nothing to do necessarily with Colby, although that's such an iconic
Duo.
rivalry
Yeah.
duo over the course of Survivor history. But I think Jerry's one of the best to never win the game, um, for sure. And it was like this close to winning Heroes versus Villains, right?
Yep.
And I don't know. And she obviously wanted to play again. I would have
Yeah.
loved to see her out there again. But I mean, yeah,
I couldn't agree more about Jerry.
yeah,
What
yeah,
about
yeah.
for me, one of the people who I'm really interested to see it go out there again for very similar reasons, but a very different situation is Coach. Because I'm fascinated by the idea of him going back after the last game he played, because he basically ran that entire season, got to the end, and still had it blow up in his face. So for the same,
Mhm.
like with Colby, whether he can reinvent himself, I'm fascinated by the idea of seeing if Coach is capable of playing differently after having basically played the game that he always wanted to play and still not win.
I could imagine Coach doing very well on this season because he has a reputation for loyalty,
Yep.
right? That's hard to come by. And he has the history of having lost at Final Tribal Council, right? And
Yep.
so if you're looking for somebody who is going to be loyal, who you think you could beat,
Yep.
right? Then you want to look towards people who have lost at Final Tribal Council potentially and struggle to win in front of a jury and also are going to be loyal. And like I would want to work with Coach. I mean, I think that Coach is a really nice guy, and like I've met him in person. He's really he's a really nice guy. So I think he has the potential maybe to surprise people, if he makes it to the end and has another chance in front of a jury, and maybe he's learned something from preaching the sort of loyalty. I think that has almost never worked at the end.
Yeah.
Like this idea that like I played an honest and loyal game, and yet you're looking at the people who, even if that's true, like were the ones that you were not honest and loyal to. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
They're the ones you had to run through in order to show your loyalty to the people sitting next to you, but the people sitting next to you are not the ones voting. So your loyalty is not going to be repaid, by them. They're going against you at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think if he can learn not to make that pitch,
Hmm.
but still show people like I'm somebody that you want in your alliance. I think that could be a good setup for him.
I completely agree. One of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you, especially now, like before 50 and all that, is because I find your perspective on the show and the game to be like fascinating and like really what I can relate to a large degree. Like I loved during Winners at War, there's like the when they have like the jury speak segment where you were talking about how excited you were to be able to go to witness the final tribal council at Winners at War. Like how did that feel to be there and like watch that, especially after having been on the other side of it and having won? Like, was it as awesome as you thought it would be beforehand to be a witness to that kind of scenario, especially in such a landmark season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wanted to be on the other side of it.
Sure.
But I was like, if I can't be sitting in those seats, like I have the best seat in the house
Yeah.
to, one of the coolest things ever, like the final tribal council of such an iconic season.
Yeah.
I felt bad because poor Sophie was like sitting right in front of me and was like so deathly ill that
Yeah.
night. Like so, all she wanted was for it to be over, and I was like, guys, this is my once in a lifetime chance to like be at Final Tribal Council. Like, let's take our time. Let's do it right. Like,
Yeah.
but poor Sophie, it was like, let it be over. And there are things that, went down that are, of course, don't make air. Like, there's so many like arguments within the jury, like
Yeah.
between like Sarah and Rob were going at it, and like there was just like I felt like I was sort of the mediator of that group. I was like, okay, I think what they're trying to say over here is almost as much navigating what was going on the jury,
Yeah.
be like, let's focus on who we got in front of us. That was kind of wild. But yeah, no, it was super super cool to get to bear witness to it. I wish I had my own recording of,
Of the entire
the
process.
unedited version, and I wish I had like written in a journal or something afterwards to like have better memories of it. But yeah, I mean, so freaking. I mean, I still, it's like, so I'm with a whole new like group of people where I'm at that I just met, and they found out that I was on Survivor, and they were like, "Oh my God, we want to watch it." And I haven't gone back and rewatched Millennials Gen X like ever. I mean, not the whole thing all the way through. And so we watched the first two episodes last night.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, and it was just so cool to like um, be like, damn, it's like I really not only did I get on, but I got to get on, I got to win, I got invited back, I got to play again with Tony and Boston
Yeah.
Rob and Sandra and Ethan and Amber and like these people that like I grew up watching.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
So it still boggles my mind, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean,
And it's
I can
been
imagine. Like, must
almost
dream come true.
10 years.
Yeah.
We're like 9.5 years later. I mean, I was like just getting into the casting process around this time 10 years ago.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So
Feels
you
like
just mentioned that you didn't watch, you've never fully watched Millennials versus Gen X, which I think is one of the best seasons ever. So I have to ask you that, have you seen that in the, like, because to me, like, obviously there's lots of stuff in that season that were fantastic that I walked away from that will always stick with me as a fan. Like, but the one of the moments that have always stuck out to me, because I think it's like one of the most cold-blooded things I've ever seen on that show. You were not involved, but I have to ask if you like had a perspective, having seen it, hopefully, the moment where Michaela turns to Jay and asks him if he was, and he like just so matter of factly takes, like, that blew me away. Did you watch? Like, I hope you've seen that, right?
So, dude, just to be clear, of course I've seen it. I've watched, I've of course seen everything from Millennials to Gen X. I
Okay,
just
okay,
haven't gone
okay,
back and rewatched the
okay,
season
okay.
like in order. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
like sat down and like I'm gonna do a rewatch. But
Okay.
I've seen clips all the time, and there are
Yeah,
certain episodes that I've watched more than once and that sort of thing, just not like start to finish.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit behind on this season, although I've seen some of the episodes. But dude, Michaela's such a badass. Watching the challenge, and like it's so cool that both Michaela and Jay have been on there multiple times
Yeah.
now. Still like 10 years later, and I just love them both, and whether or not it was a good move by Jay and Will. I don't know. I mean, obviously, they both end up in the minority pretty shortly after that, and I do
Yep.
think that, but I think it changes everything if Michaela's there because I was, I was a bit, I was aligned with Michaela as well, and so if they were aligned with Michaela and I was aligned with Michaela, do the millennials ever maybe stick together for a little bit? I think the reason we did not stick together right at the beginning of the merge was in part because they had voted out Michaela, and that isolated Hannah from them, right? And so then Hannah was more likely to want to go with like the Gen Xers that I had aligned with, like Ken and Jessica and Dave, right? And
Yeah.
then that move moves some other people around in interesting ways. Um, yeah, and I think that if he had pulled that off but kept Sunday and Brett on his side,
Yeah.
it could have been a really good move. I think so maybe the biggest mistake there wasn't voting out Michaela necessarily, but not locking in Sunday and Brett
Yeah.
as really close allies. Because honestly, they probably should have gone with Jay, based on the way things ended up. But yeah, it was so iconic move, obviously. But Michaela was, it would have been interesting to see what she would have done next because
Yeah.
she was a very dynamic player.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about was you have the business where you're coaching people to get on other reality shows, which right off the hop, I have to say, when I found out that you were doing that, I thought that was a genius idea. As somebody who has successfully gotten on the show, like you have such a different perspective than anybody who has never pulled that off. And like first, and you're very obviously like a student of the show. Like I thought that that was like a genius idea. So like where did that come from? Like what inspired you to do that to begin with?
It happened organically. I mean, really, it happened organically. Like I, after Millennials Gen X,
Hmm.
I was sort of like one of the super fans of the season, and so people would ask me for advice on their audition video and that sort of thing. And I was raising money for lung cancer research at the
Yep.
time, and so I had the option open for people to make a donation. And if they made a donation, I would say, send me your video and I'll review it. And so, at first it started just that way. And it's not like I was doing them all the time.
Yep.
But even some of those people that I, worked with on their audition video way back when, before I ever started this as a business, ended up getting on the show. And so that was always fun. And sometimes it happened quite a bit later. So I enjoyed helping people with their audition videos. It was fun for me. And then Winners at War happened, and I started to get flooded with requests for
Oh,
help
really?
because with Winners at War, I was the super fan of the season. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like Michelle was a super fan as well, but like I was really the face of the super fan, right?
Yep.
And so I think, you know, I got so many requests that I couldn't keep up, and
Yep.
I had to say no. I had to say, and I didn't like that I liked doing it. I liked helping people with it. And so at the end of the season, so many people were asking me for help, that I was like, why don't I just do this all at once?
Hmm.
Um, so I was like, I'll do a workshop. And I posted about the workshop and did it. So it was like a three-pronged benefit thing. So charged $40 for it and said, obviously for the $40, you guys will get the workshop and the help with it. What I'm going to get out of it is I'm going to use the money that we raise from this in the Survivor charity auction to get souvenirs for myself from this season. And then all of the money is going to go to charity through
Yeah.
the auction, right?
Yep.
I ended up going a little bit over budget with my charity auction purchases, and I spent a little bit more than I raised. Some of my things went for way, way more than I thought they would. Still some of the most expensive purchases I've ever made in my entire life. Whoops. But it was sort of a win-win-win. Like we had this fun workshop. I got these souvenirs. The money went to charity. But what I realized when over 400 people signed up for it was that I was like, holy crap, like there's a market here,
Yeah.
right? Like there's there's a lot of people who are interested in this. And so I was like, if you want to meet with me privately, that's the first time I ever charged for it for myself,
Yeah.
not for charity. I was
Yep.
like, look, there's too many requests. I don't have the time in the day. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so by putting a price on it, it filtered the requests. It made it, not only was it fun for me, but now I was making some money. And remember, this was during the pandemic, and
Yeah.
I was a motivational speaker. So I
Yeah.
had no job,
Yeah.
right? Like I was laid off from my own job basically because all the bookings that I had went virtual. And then when you go virtual, you don't meet people. So I
Yeah.
stopped getting keynote speaking opportunities because I would always get them by being in a place and talking to people, whatever. And so it filled my time and it gave me something to do and a way to make some money. But it was really slow at first,
Yeah.
right? This wasn't even close to a full-time job. It was like, once a week I might meet a few people or whatever. Um, but I got better at it, right? It became, it's not just I got on the show and so I have all of the answers. That's
Yeah.
not really what this is. It's storytelling coaching. It's like figuring out who you are and what makes you interesting. And a lot of people, they say the same stuff that everybody else is saying. And it's like, well, let's get to know each other a little bit. And like, why haven't you talked about this thing that you have this personality trait so much more than anybody else, but you're still talking about how competitive you are and how manipulative you are and how you can get
Yeah.
along with any different kind of person from all walks of life and how you're a chameleon and all the same stuff that everybody else is saying in their audition video. Why are we doing that? You know what I mean? Let's focus on the things that really make you stand out. And so as I started to do it, I got better and better and better at it, and I started to come up with lessons and things that would make for people to understand themselves better and to be
Yeah.
better storytellers. And the more I do it, the better I get at it. And I think there's a big misconception from people who have not worked with me about what it is that I do. There's a lot of misconceptions, right? I think some
Sure.
people think that I'm encouraging people to fake it, to play a
Yeah.
character, play a role. Nothing could be further from the truth. I have way too many, like, I've worked with way too many people to all have them go and do the exact same thing. It would be so obvious and transparent that they are, you know, doing the Adam Klein thing or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not about that at all. And then the argument from production from Jeff is kind of like, at least a few years ago when he was first talking about this, was sort of, it can't help you, can't possibly help you, because
Yeah.
I know, I think he said on his podcast, like, when I see somebody, I know whether or not they're right for the show within 5 seconds. And no amount of coaching can give you that. Either you have it or you don't. And I disagree with that in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
One is that you have to get in front of Jeff. And how do
Yeah.
you get in front of Jeff? You get in front of Jeff with a really strong audition video, right? And so even if that's true, even if Jeff knows within 5 seconds, he only sees a small fraction of the people that apply,
Yeah. That
right?
makes sense.
Takes
Yep.
it takes a lot to get in front of him, right? And then also I think it's a bit of a view that feels a little bit I don't know, almost pessimistic, like you can't improve yourself, like you can't
Yeah.
become a better storyteller, like you can't become more dynamic. And I think storytelling is a skill. Uh, and the ability to share your story and to share your point of view and to be opinionated, those are muscles that can be worked on, right? Just like Simone Biles, nobody diminishes her accomplishments because she has a coach, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes like when I've heard people say, well, like, Adam's clients like didn't deserve to be there or whatever because like they got help, they got coaching. Does Simone Biles deserve
Yeah.
to win the Olympics? But everybody can benefit from a little bit of coaching. I
Yep.
really believe that, right? And
Yep.
and Simone Biles still got those gold medals herself. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? She didn't
Yep.
get it because her coaches got it. So I'll never say like I got these people on the show. That's not in my vocabulary. I don't
Yeah.
believe that, right? But can I be helpful in the process? Man, I think the numbers like kind of speak for themselves.
Yeah.